To understand why the acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, is attacking my guest tonight, you need a little bit of a backstory. And the story starts 45 years ago, when a couple of Alabama lawyers founded an organization aimed at protecting the rights gained during the civil rights movement. They called their group the Southern Poverty Law Center, and through strategic lawsuits, including one over a horrific lynching in Alabama in 1981, the SPLC succeeded in financially breaking the modern Ku Klux Klan, even forcing the KKK to turn over its national headquarters. Now, in the decades since, the Southern Poverty Law Center has tracked hate groups around the country, sharing many of its findings with the FBI, until Trump's FBI Director Kash Patel ended that partnership just last year. And this week, Trump's Justice Department indicted the SPLC, accusing the organization of fraud. Now, the indictment alleges that the SPLC deceived its donors because money the organization paid to informants inside white supremacists and other hate groups was actually funding those hate groups. That was the argument, which I would note is an insane thing to argue. Now, more importantly, here's how an actual lawyer, our friend, former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance, sums it up. She said, quote, "The Justice Department wants us to believe that one of the nation's leading civil rights groups, the people who broke the Klan and continue to expose the white supremacist groups that crop up in its wake, is actually supporting racism and domestic terror, that they're in fact responsible for whipping up the frenzy." Now, if that sounds like a deeply warped, messed up stretch, well, Joyce is hardly alone among former federal prosecutors in thinking the case is likely to fall apart once it hits an actual courtroom. But a legal victory may not be the point here. The acting Attorney General, who is Donald Trump's former personal lawyer and desperately wants to be the long-term Attorney General, the formal final one, he accused the SPLC of, quote, "manufacturing racism to justify its existence." And the White House is echoing that. The White House press secretary is now referring to the 2017 White Supremacists Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville as the Charlottesville hoax. That's what she's calling it. That rally, at which a counter-protester was killed and dozens more injured, and several white supremacists were held criminally and civilly liable for violence, was apparently a false flag operation funded by the Southern Poverty Law Center or something like that. That's their argument. And our friends over at Fox News are saying the indictment shows that the real racists have always been the anti-racist black activists who invented racism as a way to go after white people. Okay, that's their argument. There you go. And if that is not far enough out on a crazy offensive limb for you, President Trump is now claiming that this indictment somehow proves what else? That the 2020 election was stolen, which is, of course, a big freaking hint as to what this actually might be about. Congressman Dan Goldman is back with me to talk about all of this. Okay. My colleague Steve Bannon, who's brilliant and writes the Maddow blog, laid out the chain of thoughts Trump appears to be following to get from the SPLC indictment to the 2020 election this way. They're facing criminal allegations. They're progressive. Progressives opposed Trump in 2020. He lost that election, therefore, throughout the results. Is that their argument, I guess? Or what do you think this is all about?
Well, the other way I was thinking about it is that they are responsible, really, for undermining and exposing many white supremacist groups. Well, we know that January 6th and the riots were fomented, facilitated, and executed by white supremacist groups. So is it now that he's saying, well, because the Southern Poverty Law Center actually was, quote, feeding the frenzy, which I think is a great comment by Joyce, that they are responsible for the riot on January 6th and whatever happened thereafter? It's so insane, Jen. It's just insane. The only thing that rivals it is the absurdity of this indictment.
Acting U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche, you overlapped with him at SDNY, and he picked a fight with you on social media about this criminal indictment. I have so many questions here. Like, is this who he's always been? What is going on here? What is that about?
No, I mean, that's and I'm not the only one who worked with him at the Southern District who is absolutely shocked and alarmed by what he has become as the leader of the Department of Justice. I worked with him for many years, had no inkling. Well, I didn't even know what his political background was because that was not something that was ever at issue. But he was a straightforward, straight-shooting prosecutor. And the notion that he, of all people, would be doling out these politicized orders, these such clearly partisan and evidence-less orders and investigations and indictments is bewildering to just about everybody who worked with him. But everybody I speak to is just alarmed and incredibly disappointed because he has really helped to take this Department of Justice into the sewer. And it's not going to end right after, it's not going to resurrect itself as soon as Donald Trump leaves. This is really destructive, and it will have lasting and permanent damage, and it is on Todd Blanche's shoulders.
And he desperately wants to be the Attorney General, so there is that. Congressman Dan Goldman, thank you as always.